Welcome to Supply Chain Short Takes, a brief discussion with an industry expert on important issues affecting supply chain management. I'm David Maloney, the Group Editorial Director at DC Velocity. Joining me today is Anisa Kumar. She is CEO at Narvar and is a recognized leader in global operations, analytics, and strategy with over 20 years of retail industry experience, working for brands such as Levi's, Walmart, Mervyn's, and Target. Welcome, Anisa. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you, David. Glad to be here.
Today, we're going to talk about retail returns and also managing fraudulent returns. But before we start that discussion, Anisa, for those not familiar with Narvar, can you share a bit about your company and its role in the supply chain?
Absolutely. So think of Narvar as all things post-purchase, and I define post-purchase as that moment when the customer is actually making their decision to buy and the moment that they decide that they do buy and go ahead and make that purchase, right? So at Narvar, we see every post-purchase touch point, be that communicating where the item is to the consumer, letting them know the item might be late, letting them know how to do a return, what the best way is to do a return, processing that payment, taking claims calls, having your contact centers contacted. Those are all touch points post-purchase. And we see every post-purchase touch point as a chance to build a stronger customer relationship and really drive growth for our retailers.
Thank you for that background. Product returns are a growing problem for retailers, and they make up as much as 18 to 20% of purchases and cost retailers some $800 billion in added costs. Anisa, as the volume of returns grows, what challenges have supply chains faced in managing these returns efficiently, and how are they adapting to meet the demands of both consumers and retailers?
So with this shift into e-commerce and that percent of volume in your network, e-commerce volume really growing, right? If you're an omni-channel retailer, which is defined as a retailer that has stores, maybe wholesale touch points, and then e-commerce, you've got to understand reverse logistics and this return rate as it relates to your entire network, right? So you've got to integrate across all your channels. You've got to have in-store returns. You've got to have third-party drop-offs. You've got to have your in-mail e-commerce returns. And you have to think through the costs of inventory management as well as, processing and restocking across all of these channels. I'll leave that with the challenge being you've got to optimize for cost and experience across your omni-channel network. Now, if you're a purely e-commerce brand or retailer, right? Pure play e-commerce, you still have a fair amount of cost in returns and experience that you have to optimize, right? You've got things like changing consumer expectations. They expect quick refunds, transparent return processes, but you've got to do this while making sure that the cost of these returns is not blowing up your P&L.
Anisa, amid the growing volume of legitimate returns, there's also been a troubling increase in fraudulent returns. First of all, how do you define fraud, and what are some of the most common fraudulent behaviors that retailers and supply chains are currently encountering?
This is one statistic that continues to surprise even me, right? So this year, from serving thousands of consumers in the Narvar returns network, from Narvar research, as well as what we're seeing from our retailers, this statistic of 52% of shoppers actually admitted to engaging in return fraud at least once in their consumer lifetime, right? That's a 16 percentage point increase from last year. Last year, that number was sitting at 36%. This year, that number is sitting at 52%. And this is self-admitted fraud, right?
That's obviously a much higher percentage than I would have guessed. Can you break that down further into different types of fraud you're seeing?
Within the base of our customers, we see about, and this is an average number, 10% of all returns are obviously fraudulent. What I mean by that is, you're returning an empty box, you're returning something which is just dunnage or weight, whether it's a brick, it's some sort of dunnage, you're not returning the item. It's truly obviously fraudulent behavior, right? That's 10% of all returns. But the other bucket is actually a little more concerning, which is this concept of abuse, right? And that bucket can go up to 30 to 40% of all of your returns, right? Remember, 52% of shoppers are saying that they've done this at some point. We are seeing in the data, 10% is obviously fraudulent, close to 30 to 40% is this concept of abuse in your returns, right? And what does abuse really mean, right? The most common abuse categories are a third of consumers just self-admit that they have lied about an online purchase not being delivered when in fact the purchase was delivered. And a third of consumers will admit that they are lying about their package arriving damaged, right? Then there's the obvious 60%, this is close to 40% of the pie. 60% of that abuse is people wearing stuff and returning it, because that's not obvious fraud. You put the item back in the box, but you've worn it for the weekend. You've used the bag on the weekend. You're now returning it. These were two categories that really surprised me. You bought the huge large screen TV for the Super Bowl and now you're returning it. You bought the pool cleaner for your 4th of July party and now you're returning it, right? So between obvious fraud in returns, that's the 10%, up to abuse, which is close to 30 to 40%, there is a huge increase in fraud in returns, right? Big P&L driver. There's a couple of things you've got to do here in terms of shutting down some of the obvious ones and then putting policies in place and managing the abuse so it doesn't become severe and really have financial and operational impacts to your business.
Anisa, how can the industry as a whole work together to address the issue of return fraud?
That is such a great question, David. And this is, in fact, what we are thinking through with the industry, our 1,500 plus group of customers, both retailers and brands, as we look at, transportation and shipping trends across all of those orders. We look at consumer trends. We are partnering with our retail partners to really look at this problem holistically, and our shipping and carrier partners, right? To really think through how we might put policies in place that will shut down truly fraudulent activities, right? How you might refund, how you might check at final mile the contents, how we might add network points in to do some of that, and then how we might shut down the abusive behavior, right? As you look across this data, and any one of us in a silo really only has the vision of our data. But together, when we look across the industry and the carrier network and deliveries and shipment data, right, we can paint a really powerful picture that can help our retailers and brands really put in place and work with us on the AI and the intelligence that needs to come to policies and needs to come to, refunds and automation and claims and things of that nature to really be powered by data.
That makes a lot of sense. Anisa, how would someone get more information about what we've discussed today?
That's a timely question, David. We're actually just going live with our annual State of Returns and Fraud report that Narvar puts out. This is information that we share based on our research. We share it with our partners. We share it with our customers. We also share it with those that aren't our customers just to educate and from a thought leadership standpoint. So you can download this document if you go to the Narvar website. That's www.narvar.com. You will see a banner right at the top. It's called State of Returns and Fraud Report, right? You can download the white paper. You can read some of these numbers I talked about. You can read even more data and consumer research, right? And right there on the website at different places. If you do want to schedule demos for any of our products, you can do that too. But you're welcome to download the white paper with all of the data and the analytics in it.
Thank you, Anisa, for a very informative discussion.
Thank you, David. It's been great.
We've been talking today to Anisa Kumar, the CEO of Narvar. I'm David Maloney, and this has been Supply Chain Short Takes.